Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Steel Target Paint Podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Steve Foster. Steve, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Jeff. How are you doing?
I'm having a great day here in Florida. It's still hot, able to shoot, looking for the 4 to the 3-day weekend. Going to get 2 practices and a match in. How about yourself?
You know, I'm just trying to come down off my high from last weekend. It was a crazy weekend, but we plan on shooting the local Griffin, Georgia match, which is, I think, the largest local Steel Challenge match in the country. So it's been about 3 months since they've had their match. So I'm looking forward to shooting that.
Well, Steve, toot your own horn and tell everybody why you're coming down off of that mountain.
Yeah, it was pretty cool this weekend in Rimfire Rifle Open with my Magnum Research X-Bolt. I shot, I believe it's the fastest time that's ever been shot in Steel Challenge history. I shot a 58.42 and set a couple personal bests, but you know, my goal since the last year's World Speed Shoot was to break 60 seconds in an 8-stage match, and it took me, I threw a blog post out there to kind of talk about, you know, goal setting and planning and that type of thing, and you know, it took me 405 days to do it from when I set my plan and started working the plan. But man, I'm just so excited. Probably the most special part about it is I was with my daughter Vanessa. It was her second Steel Challenge match ever, so that was really cool. But no, it was a good time, man.
Well, that's awesome. Well, you know, Steve, I was at PCC Nationals a couple of weeks ago, and first stage, I'm looking at who's on the stage, and our next guest is on the stage, and I'm looking around for him, and I can't find him. But we're going to give everybody a hint who hasn't seen the teaser. He's the first ever PCCO World Speed Shooting Championship champion, and he's the only PCC champion in USPSA. So why don't you tell our listeners who it is, Steve?
Oh, we've got Max with us, and congratulations, Max. You're coming off another big win. That's 4 nationals in a row for you, huh?
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for coming on, Max. You know, that lead in there was interesting because here I was, you know, I was an RO on your first stage, and I'm looking around and I'm going, "Where's Max? Where's Max?" And I'm looking around, and then here comes this, and I know what you look like, but I'd always seen you in a shooting jersey, and you were like in a short sleeve, button down dress shirt.
Costco
out there
shirt.
ready to shoot. You look like you could have easily been cutting my lawn. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about that. You know, well, Steve, go ahead. You had talked to me about a question you want to ask him, so why don't you ask that?
Well, you know, and Max, we talked briefly before the podcast. I predominantly shoot Steel Challenge. I've only shot just a little bit in USPSA, but you know, I've got my ear to the ground and watch social media and videos and whatnot, so I definitely know who you are, and as well as some others in USPSA, and I've got a ton of respect for what you do, and you know, you put out some great content, and you're always on these forums helping people out, but man, somebody at your level, you're dominating the PCC game in Steel Challenge, I'm sorry, in USPSA. I want to hear your viewpoint about sponsorship. Do you have any sponsors, or why aren't you bogged down with all these logos on jerseys like some of the other folks out there?
Well, I guess there's a few ways, there's a few reasons that go into like why I'm not wearing a jersey right now. One of them is I didn't I kind of wanted to do a custom design this year, and I work with Icarus, and they've been awesome to me. JJ actually recommended or like introduced me to them.
Sure.
But yeah, I just didn't get the design done in time, and then you know the match got delayed because of COVID, and I'm like still unsure about like what logos I want on there. So I just kind of put it off.
I gotcha.
And then
you may have been one of the more comfortable people out there, though, because even though
exactly
the you know, the shirts breathe pretty well, you looked pretty comfortable out there in your short sleeve Docker shirt, I think it was.
it's I don't know if it's a Costco brand, but it's Jerry. It's like Gerry, and yeah, I mean I got them as plain shirts to kind of use in videos, and my other options at this time were like a sponsored shirt that's a cotton t-shirt, and I was like, yeah, it's gonna be a little like I'd rather not wear cotton, so these are pretty cool.
Yeah.
But one of the main things is that I work with a lot of companies, and I have companies that support me, but I don't really have any official signed contracts. So,
Gotcha.
like all my support I feel like is really genuine, and I'm not like a company representative for anyone. So I can go out and I can say hey, I've had a problem with like this product and I'm trying this out now, and like just yesterday I posted a video. I don't actually, it might have been 2 days ago, but
That the
of
trigger video?
yeah, the CMC trigger
Yep.
that I
Yep.
wanted to try for a while. So I just ordered one. I threw it in a gun just like to see if I got any malfunctions, like how fast I could split with it. And like I never want to sacrifice being able to do that because I'm like under contract with a company like AR Gold or Hyperfire or something like that, which are awesome triggers. But I want to have the ability to like promote them and like promote what I run, but also, you know, to try other things when they come around.
Nice. You know, I think we, as we've talked to a number of the upper edge shooters, you know, BJ, Casey, Max, but the one that we did get a similar answer as yours was Shannon Smith.
Okay.
And he said something very similar, that, you know, his goal is to run the best equipment that he feels is best for him. And he doesn't want to be tied down to having to run anyone else's because, as you point out, he's under contract or has a deal with them. So very interesting. Thank you on that.
Yeah, and I find like once you get to a certain level, it's like you don't have to ask for anything. Like like companies they'll want you to run their stuff and they'll support you, and as long as you genuinely believe that you know that would be your choice regardless. Like all the stuff that I run, I would pay for. Like it would be my selection,
Sure.
even if I wasn't getting supported. So yeah, that's important to me.
And that's one of the things that I appreciate following your content over the last, I don't know if it's been about 2 years or so, is you always seem like you're tinkering, trying to find the best setup. And you were working on, I think it was, you made it the video 15 on the 60 days with the Nationals, and something like you had some hot stuff going on. But I enjoyed watching those videos. I don't shoot USPSA, but just to hear, you know, somebody of your level talking about different optics, different triggers, and different guns, and those types of things. And I felt it was a very honest and genuine opinion, and that wasn't skewed by some other company because you did have a contract. And so I personally appreciate that type of content, which is great.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
So a couple of years ago, you'd done an interview with Arik, and you talked about at that point how one of the biggest pitfalls in PCC is the reliability of the equipment. How do you feel the reliability has come since then? Are you feeling that you're finding more reliable equipment? I mean, a guy at your caliber, I know you were even talking about on that trigger video how you were still getting some trigger freeze, but it was a trigger you might use. And I don't know if anybody else would feel that.
It's not a reliability issue.
Okay, trigger freeze isn't reliability. Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah.
So things like feeding and such like that.
Feeding's probably number one, and then there are other trigger issues like failing to reset, which can happen for different reasons. Like I'm not super sure. I've been wanting to kind of cut up a receiver set that I know is failing, and then get slow-mo video of what's actually happening, like on the hammer, because I pretty much guarantee that the bolt is going back far enough to reset it. I think something's happening when we go back into battery, where the gun, like, you know, the bolt smashing into the barrel extension, like shakes the gun enough that I think like a weaker disconnector engagement somehow like lets the hammer slip off, and then the hammer hits the bolt on the first bolt bounce back when it's like just slightly out of battery. And so you don't end up getting an out-of-battery detonation, but you get a dead trigger. And occasionally, and I've had it where I do get an out-of-battery detonation on basically like a slam fire like that. So and that's like, I don't know how much detail you want to get into, but I'll just leave it there. But yeah, that's like an example of the kind of thing that have a theory of what's going on, but I still don't know. I just kind of know what runs for me.
Well, maybe you can get a hold of the slow-mo guys, and they can come out with their high-speed cameras and
yeah, I'd love to
get a good video of that. That would be pretty interesting to see.
That'd be cool.
I've seen mock-ups of cartoon type things, animations of how a gun works in that area. But to see an actual live one, that would be pretty impressive.
Yeah, and like you'll never see a cartoon of like that malfunction happening either.
Yes, good point.
Right.
Yeah, the
It'd be
cartoons
interesting.
always seem to run perfect. I don't get it.
Right. And they're timed awkwardly because the animator, you know, is like doing, it's like a robotic animation. Like it's pretty funny.
I think you saw the same one I saw.
Oh yeah, I've seen a lot of those.
So
let's talk
Max,
a
I
little
want to
bit.
talk a little
Go
bit
ahead,
about.
Steve. Go ahead,
Hang
Steve.
on. I was just into that trigger freeze thing because it looks like, you know, I watched quite a few of your videos again over the last couple of years, and man, sometimes when you're double tapping a target, it's like, man, that thing go full auto there for a second. Your splits are what in that 0.10, 0.11, somewhere in there. That is so fast. So how do you pull the trigger that quick? What's the secret?
So let's see. So the first thing that I'd like to mention is how your gun is tuned as far as like recoil timing. So my
Sure.
gun is blocked as far as the bolt travel. So that's called a short stroke, right? And
Right. Yep.
what I figured out is like the more I short stroke it, the better it feels as far as recoil.
Sure.
Like the dot moves less and less. But then
Right.
you get past a certain point, and then it gets you start running into all these reliability issues. Like first of which is the trigger, second of which is, you know, feeding. Like does the next round have enough time to pop up in the mag?
Right.
That kind of stuff. So my gun is like, I've always run it right on the edge of reliability as far as like how short can I make the cycle length. And then what that results in also is just a faster cycle time. So when you compare it to 223 or a normal AR-15, like that bolt has to go back like almost 3 times as far to actually clear and eject the casing and then pick up the next round. Whereas on a 9, you know, the cartridge is so short that it doesn't need to go that far. So in that sense, like your gun is ready to shoot very, very quickly, especially I'm running like light bullets. So I'll either run 100 or 115 grains right now is what I'm liking. And that further increases like the bolt speed because it's got more energy. So like my gun, if it was to actually bump fire, I get accused of bump firing, or not accused, you know, but like people say, oh, that was bump fire, right? It's like how my gun is set up now, it almost never is, because like if it was bump fire, you literally wouldn't be able to perceive that it was 2 shots just because it's so fast.
Right.
So when I do get the occasional split, it's like less than 10. It's kind of just like a luck thing, like that, like my finger, you know, just moved like 10% faster on that shot. But just having a gun that returns to battery so fast helps a lot in terms of getting your split time down. So like on my gun, it's easier for me to shoot a 10 and 11 split than it would be on like a stock full stroke gun, even with the same trigger.
Right.
You're ready before the bolt is. Is that what you're saying? Before the gun's back in battery and the trigger's been reset.
No, I think I'm still ready after, but it's like both are shorter. So the gun's back in battery a lot faster, and also I can be ready faster.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then another thing is like just having your trigger tuned. So you mentioned like you saw my video from one of the 15 days I did that I got through.
Yep.
Yeah, so 25%, that's not terrible, I guess. Well, my plan is to eventually do more videos later, but I couldn't do them all in a row. It's just too much work. But
it's a ton. People don't understand how much time it takes to create that level of content. No, I hear you.
Yeah, I kind of screwed myself on day 4. I was like, yeah, that video took like half the day. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that again.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, about trigger tuning, like you have like your pull weight, which is what everyone talks about. And then there are a couple other things which really matter, right? Which is first like your total travel. So like the back and forth travel from being pulled to being reset completely. And then you also have your reset weight, which is something that like it seems super intuitive as like people should talk about it more, but I never really heard about reset weight actually like being defined. Maybe it is by like some people, but like I included that in my video and actually tried to measure it with the spring gauge. It's a little easier. You just like go slow and watch it, harder with an electronic gauge. But so like reset weight is super important because you actually don't have to release your finger or the pressure that your trigger finger is applying all the way in order for the trigger to reset. So basically, like to shoot a fast split like that on a hyperfire, say I have a hyperfire that's my ECL, it's pulling like 2 1/4 and then like a 1 1/4 pound reset. So that means that it takes 2 1/4 pounds to break the shot. And then if I let off the weight that my trigger finger is applying to 1 1/4 pounds, then the return spring is going to actually push the hammer forward, even though I'm still applying that 1 pound of pressure, or 1 1/4
Gotcha.
pound. So the reason I can split so fast on a trigger that's tuned well is I only have to like kind of flutter my finger back and forth, applying a difference of weight that's only about a pound. And you can do
Gotcha.
that extremely quickly, especially if it's not like centered at 0. If that makes sense. Like for me, I think it'd be easier to apply 2 pounds than 1 pound than 2 pounds than 1 pound than it is to apply 1 pound and 0 pounds and 1 pound and 0 pounds, because like you have to completely release your finger to go back to 0, which is like why
Gotcha.
a trigger like the AR Gold, which is a very, very nice feeling trigger, trips me up a little bit when I'm used to the hyperfire, because the AR Gold has a very low reset force. So it's almost like you have to do everything, while the hyperfire almost like pushes you off with a stronger.
I gotcha.
Nice.
So on a normal, like if you picked up like a GMR or something, just a stock with a decent trigger without a short stroke, what type of split would you be looking at? Would you say, is it in that 15-16 range? Just as a point
like
place of comparison.
So say like an average trigger that's not much more than like 4.5 pounds. I can
Right.
usually be consistent around the 13-14 mark. And
Gotcha.
yeah, so it's a pretty small difference. But like a GMR with their like with the JP trigger out of the box, like I can split just as fast, like 10s 11s, but it's less consistent for me. Like it's a very, very fine line of like force to apply in order for me
Right.
to split that fast. And once I have enough time behind the gun, it becomes more natural and my trigger freeze will start to go away. But like the reason that I run a hyperfire is it's like it's so forgiving as far as you know, like not having trigger freeze, that it almost feels like it shoots doubles by itself. So
Gotcha.
you think it and then it goes off twice. Yeah.
No, it makes complete sense.
You know, so over the course of a nationals, I think this last one we shot was 175 rounds, something like that. It was close. You know, that's a lot of splits.
I think it was 350. I could be wrong.
Well, it was only 12 stages.
Yeah, 12 stages times over 30 rounds a stage.
Okay, fair enough. I'm not a math major. My question.
You're correct.
My question to you is, I mean, of course, you're able to do that, and that's something you're able to do. But is that as important as, say, you know, a good stage plan and hits? Like, if you were to give our listeners a tip, like just one tip, to say, okay, you're going to start shooting PCC, and you want to be good, here's what you need to focus on. What would that be?
Well, that question like doesn't exactly make sense, right? But I think what you're asking is like, what would you focus on first?
Fair enough.
Right, before you
good
move
point.
on
Good
to the
point.
next thing. Okay. So I actually would just point you to what day was it that I did? Was it day 5? I don't know. No, it's day 4. If you type in like day 4 Maximundi maybe on YouTube, so that's like what I call is a tune-up practice session. And it's kind of just like dialing in your grip and stance with the rifle. And that's the very first thing I would do. So the goal of that type of practice is to learn like basically what the minimum effort is that you can put into essentially holding the gun correctly and connecting it to your body correctly so that you can get perfect dot return under recoil.
Right.
And yeah, in that video I go over like some things that I'm testing and like what kind of pressures I'm applying where. Every gun's different, everybody's body's different, so it's something you're gonna have to experiment with, and like that's the first thing that I would try like to master essentially. Is like just put a target out at 25 yards. I like to use a white piece of paper, just an 8.5 by 11. It's like that's approximately the size of the target that you want to shoot within the bigger brown target, because it's like it covers the A zone and then it goes a little bit outside of the A zone on either edge, which is like your acceptable Charlie area. So yeah, just being able to perfectly control your dot and not letting it leave that zone at like 25 yards. That's the first thing I would focus on.
Nice. And a follow-up on that, and it's something that Steve and one of the shooters he shoots with is on the team, very fast shooter, Steve or Chris Barrett. And, you know, historically, when a lot of people came into Steel Challenge, and in USPSA, there's a lot of eye cutting. You're taking your eye off of your sights, getting to the next target and shooting. Is that something you do in PCC, or do you pretty much have that dot in your focus the whole time and then you're transitioning to target, or does it matter based on the target?
So it kind of matters based on how wide your transition is. But one of the things in the classes that Lynn and I teach that we really need to hammer into people is that you can actually see more than what you're focused on. And it's something that like everyone intuitively knows, but they just don't apply. So in competition, I'm almost never focused on the dot as far as time, right? So I'm basically focused on it for a split second, like right before and after I'm calling my shots on a target.
Okay.
And then otherwise my eyes are, you know, looking for the next thing to do. So if there's an array, like you have a Steel Challenge array, like let's say it's one where you're not swinging the gun super wide, so like your neck would be breaking off the stock, I guess. So like, I don't know. Maybe
Roundabout would be a good one for that.
Yeah. So you can kind of see all the targets in front of you. So when your eye snaps over to the next target, you know, you still have periphery like around your whole vision, and you might not be focused on the dot, but you can still see it move. So like when your eyes shift over, you actually don't lose your vision down the sight. It's just not in the center of your frame, essentially. So it's kind of like, say you stare off into the distance and you hold your hand up, you know, like you hold your right hand off to the right and you stare off in the distance at some point. Like you can hold up your fingers and you can see your fingers and how much, like how many fingers you're holding up. So say like I hold up my index finger without looking at it, like I'm staring past it straight ahead. I can move my finger around and watch how it moves, right? But I'm not actually focused on that as my point of focus. So what we try to get people to realize is that when you're looking at the next point on the target that you want to shoot, you can actually watch your dot and your gun move over in motion. And then that gives you essentially complete information of how fast your gun is being aimed. And then when it gets close to the target, your brain can subconsciously prepare for the moment in time when it's going to be aligned with your point of focus. And then you can actually start timing your trigger pulls so that your trigger pull finishes exactly at that point instead of starts at that point.
And this is why we have a 4-time champion. No, that's really good. I appreciate that insight. Now you mentioned Lynn. Who is Lynn?
So she's my girlfriend, and she's an awesome shooter too. I met her through shooting. She's actually been shooting longer than I have. But she's from Reno. She's got like some 3-gun major championship titles, Area 2 Open Ladies title last year. And you probably met her too because she was on our squad with the Williams sisters at Nationals.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've been teaching classes for the last couple of years, and yeah, we're doing pistol classes now. Previously, it's been just PCC because that's kind of what I'm known for, I guess. But we have this awesome format coming up, which is we're kind of designing a 3-day class around a local match. So we're going to the range. We're doing like a full day of instruction, which is like modules, like transitions, shooting on the move, like all these things, competition skills that you can directly apply. And then the very next day will be the local match. So we shoot it as a squad, and we get coaching, or the students get coaching from us. And then on day 3, we've agreed with the ranges to let us go back onto the stages that we just shot. And yeah, so they'll leave them up and they won't tear them down. And then we get to work as a class, like rerunning sections of stages and the full stages all day, which is a really unique experience in USPSA because, not like Steel Challenge where they're the same courses that are just set up and you can set them up anywhere. Like you don't really get the opportunity all the time to rerun USPSA stages and try a new skill or try a different plan and see actually what the benefits would be.
Oh yeah, I don't practice much. I mean, I still shoot USPSA and love it. I don't practice as much as I used to, but when we used to practice it, we do the same kind of thing and try to open up our minds to, should this be run left to right, right to left, maybe center to left, right, however it was. And you're right. You get one shot at a match to decide what's going to be the way you're going to run it in your execution. So that's pretty cool. And the fact that they're getting direct feedback in a match environment is fantastic. That's quite a feature. And since you're talking about the training, we'll just give you the plug now. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you if they're interested in that?
So if you're on Instagram, that's a really good way. I'm pretty active in responding to direct messages. But if you're not, you can email Max at maxamundi.com. That's maxamundi.com. And then that's my website, and you can go there, just maxamundi.com, and then it's pretty much just a portal to sign up for a class. There's not really much content on there right now. So yeah, we got one coming up in California in Tulare at Rankin Field, and then another one that's actually just a couple weeks out. It's going to be in Chicago area at Aurora Sportsman's Club. And yeah, and if you're interested in bringing us to a location near you, just hit me up and we'll work something out.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Max, approximately how long have you been shooting for, let's say, competitively?
So let's see. So I'm 26 right now. When I was 20, I discovered like what 3-gun was, and I decided that looked really cool and I wanted to try it. But I was in college at California at the time, and I couldn't buy a handgun because I wasn't 21 yet.
Sure.
So I had an AR-15 that I never really shot, like maybe a couple times a year. My dad actually got that for me as a Christmas present, probably during one of the assault weapon ban scares earlier that I didn't really follow.
Sure.
But my dad was that kind of, like he wasn't really into guns, but he was like, they're going to ban ARs,
You need to have
I'm going to get my kid one, so he has one.
Heck yeah. Love it.
So, but yeah, I didn't really do much with it aside from shooting, groups at the benches a couple times a year. And then, it was years later when I was 20 that I discovered 3-gun. So, I got a shotgun. I got a CZ 912, and
Nice.
I started practicing, I guess, like preparing to shoot 3-gun, and then I got a handgun. Actually, like through my parents, because in California you could still do that. Like your parents could buy you a handgun if you were over 18.
Right.
And then I quickly realized that 3-gun is like really impractical to start with, so I started shooting USPSA. Actually, the first match I ever went to was on my 21st birthday, which was up in Reno at WNPL. And so I've been shooting for a little over 5 years.
Steve, here's a
that's
trivia
great.
question. What other division in USPSA is Max a grandmaster in?
Whew. I was going to say revolver, but because that's an obscure one. Why would he be?
With my revolver that I got for 3-gun.
There you go. I'm gonna go straight up the middle with production.
You got it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I got a
that's cool.
CZ Shadow as my first handgun ever.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. I luckily had some friends who pointed me in the right direction, and it was kind of an opportunity thing. Like I was deciding which piece of Tupperware I was going to buy. Like
Yeah.
I was like M&P, Glock,
Yeah.
or XD, like which one's for me? And then I think my friends who had already, like, they were kind of getting into USPSA and they had already shot IDPA a bit too. They like saw the Shadow and they were like, well, that's cool. We want a Shadow. And then, so, they told me like, oh, we want this. You should get this. So then I ended up getting it, and it turned out to be an awesome decision. Like, that I learned how to shoot pistol on the CZ Shadow. So that was pretty nice.
That's awesome. You got a lot, Max. I'm just gonna say this. You got a lot better friends than I do, because I got a safe full of misdirection. Yeah, it's tough because when, kind of where the line of questioning is, getting started and all that kind of stuff, it's tough if you don't know anybody that's in the sport that's decent because, some people will start off with, a gun that's just, it's not even upgradable, let alone, something that could be competitive. And, myself and a couple of folks that are in the industry, mainly on the rimfire side, we've been talking the last week and a half about, and certainly open to your ideas, is how do you get more people, whether it's on the Steel Challenge side, we focus a little bit more on the youth shooters with our team or just in competitions, but how do we do a better job getting people into this sport?
That's a tough question. I mean, as far as getting people into it, I think you just have to reach out or promote people that have some kind of a presence online because,
sure.
Well, like the John Wick thing, I think with Terran's range too is huge as far as like people kind of seeing regular people go out and train. And they're like, whoa, like you can shoot guns that fast? Because a lot of people were like me where, going to the shooting range for them is like going to a bench with a dude on a megaphone telling you, to unload and cease fire so people can go pace their targets or whatever.
Right.
And a lot of people aren't even aware of what action shooting sports are. So I think just, being active on the internet and sharing cool things and just, keeping a positive attitude is the best way to do that. And then if anyone has questions, have some resources ready that you can point them to.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. When I started my competitive shooting, I just did air quotes, not that you can see them, but as I started competitive shooting, it did involve a piece of Tupperware. And a buddy of mine's like, hey, man, I shoot Glocks. And I said, I'm sorry, because I always was brought up in the household, hey, you got to have a 1911 because that's the gun. And so he suckered me up to taking some Tupperware up to this GSSF match, and we shot, and there was a guy that walked up and was like, man, you're pretty good. It's, well, I just started shooting this stuff. He said, oh, you like this? Oh, yeah, it's pretty cool, He said, you got to come down here and shoot some steel down in Griffin, Georgia. I'm like, what is this steel challenge that you speak of? And that bum, Glenn Weber, he runs one of the largest steel challenge, both state and local matches in the country. And I've been hooked ever since, man. It's just squeezing that trigger and having that instant gratification, hearing that ting. Well, it took me a little bit to get there, but you know what I mean? It was, I got hooked. And so I've got a thing that anybody that ever wants to go shoot steel challenge, let me know. I'm buying, and then after that, you're hooked. You're done. It's over. So, man, that's cool how you got into it, and those are some good tips. Well, let me ask you a little bit more about your training regimen. You've only been doing this for 5 years, and you've had tons and tons of success. And what I've seen, I'm not a stalker or anything like that, but just kind of keeping an eye on what you're posting in forums. Yeah, maybe just a little bit. Maybe I'm fanboying a little bit here, but it's just you're accessible. But Jeff got me all screwed up speaking in my ear about he's stalking you. It's kind of weird. But you've only been shooting for like 5 years, so in the last, I don't know if you want to go back like the last 12 months in preparing for this nationals, or if you want to go back 24 months. What does your shooting training schedule look like? How many rounds do you think you're throwing down the range every year? Give our listeners some flavor of what it takes to prepare or to remain at the top of the game. Because we talked a little bit before the podcast, there's a guy, Josh Rose, there's a couple of guys out there that are working real hard at, trying to take you down. So how are you staying on top of your game? What does that training look like?
So I don't really this is a hard question for me to ask whenever I get asked it, because I don't really have a regular scheduled training regimen or anything. I'm kind of a crammer, so I treat a match like a final, and I just read the textbook, the 2 weeks before going into it. So basically if I get started cramming early enough, I can make a little progress and actually improve to be better than where I was before, which I think I possibly did a little bit at this nationals, but it's hard to tell because like I haven't really been shooting any matches this year because of the whole COVID thing.
Right.
So I was a little out of practice and not in the best shape right now. I'm like, I need to get, some like regular exercise going because by the end of the day in the last couple matches, I could tell that my head was like not really where it needed to be.
Oh yeah, me too. Definitely me too.
Yeah.
Of course, you've got me by 30 years, so.
Yeah, Max Jeff is just old. Keep going.
Yeah. So as far as round count over the year, like when I do ramp up the training, I'll put a lot of rounds down range. So I could be going and shooting every day, like 500 rounds, and occasionally like 1,000 rounds a day or something. With PCC, it's really easy to burn through a ton of ammo. Yeah. And then especially when I'm tinkering, probably like a quarter to a third of my round count over the year is function testing. And I like try to pretend that it's practice, like, oh, I'm going to practice recoil control, and then I'll dump a mag at a sealed target. And it's like, hey, the gun ran. I guess that's good.
How many rounds was that? Let me write that to 50 rounds right there. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's not where I'd like to be. I'd like to have a regular training schedule, or at least something resembling it. So I'm kind of like, one of the other things is that I don't feel like PCC takes all the time available that I have to prep for shooting. Sure. So I'm trying to like fill it with some other things. So the rest of this year, I'm focusing on carry optics and open. I'm going to shoot both of those at USPSA Nationals in October. And then after that, I'm going to go into 3-gun next year. So I'll be shooting TAC optics. And I'm just going to give that a shot again because I started in it, never really took it too seriously. Like never really figured out a lot of things. Like I never really figured out the shotgun before. I just kind of like fumbled my way through it and never really figured out long range rifle, which is, I think is probably the most important part of 3-gun. And now I kind of have the resources and support to where I feel like, I'm comfortable like tackling those problems now. Yeah, so I'm still planning on keeping up PCC, and the first IPSC World Shoot got pushed back to 2022, but that's like the main PCC match that I want to win in the future.
Gotcha.
Was this national still a qualifier for that, Max?
Oh, who knows
how they're doing
at this point? I mean, like Pistol has a defined process as far as qualifiers and stuff. A lot of people are talking about this one being a qualifier, but I don't think USPSA has actually released anything for sure. And the World Shoot being delayed a year might change things too. So yeah, but I think there's going to be enough slots. Like if you want to go, you're going to get a slot. The qualification thing is more about being on the 4-person team.
On the team, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, let's touch base back a little bit on Steel Challenge here. Yeah. Steve's the stalker, but I'm the nerd, and I get online and I look at history and I was looking back here, and back in 2016, you shot this, like I said, the first PCC optic world speed shoot for that division, and you shot an 8210. Do you want to take a guess at where that would have ended up in 2019, just 3 years later?
Well, I think I'm cheating because you kind of told me before we started recording.
He did too.
You didn't have to tell him that, like, Max.
I don't remember though. I think it was like 30 something, like 35. Yep.
31st. And again, I think that just goes to the maturation of the sport, the number of people shooting in it. I mean, in 2016, there were 9 people shooting that division, and in 2019, as I'm scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, there was 112.
Yeah.
And and people are finding that gun is fun, and they can go fast, and they're getting faster and faster. Do you remember what I asked you at Nationals? When I said, why don't you shoot much steel anymore? Do you remember what your answer was?
No, I have no idea what I said.
Your answer was because the kids are too fast.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are, brother. Woo.
Yeah, I actually met Grant for the first time at the JP PCC Midwest match, which was a couple weeks before, which I staffed at the end of May. Or was it at the end of May? No, it was the middle of May, right? a week before. Yeah, it was like May 22nd or something like that. Yeah, and yeah, he's a super cool kid, and I took like a stag rifle off of the table there, and then he had a Vortex rangefinder, and I traded him my rifle for his rangefinder, and I have no regrets. I love this rangefinder. It's so cool. I bring it to like my practice sessions, and I'm like, yeah, that target's at 17.6 yards.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, it has been great to see Grant shoot more USPSA, and I think he came in like, what, 12th or 13th, something like that at the Nationals. I mean, that, just from an outsider looking in, that, the PCC Nationals was stacked with talent, and to have Grant place so high, I was really proud of him. That's a pretty strong finish.
Yeah, and he had a stage win on the long stage too, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, by
with
a lot.
65-yard swinger. We heard all about it.
Yeah.
So what's one thing that you wish that somebody would have told you as you were coming up through the game that you had to kind of figure out by yourself that could have, outside of the Tupperware CZ Shadow thing, is there anything else that you wish somebody would have told you as you, progress from maybe AMS or level shooter into the champion you are today?
I think the sponsorship thing and dealing with companies, like I've heard different approaches to this, like oh, just reach out, like try and build yourself up as like an asset to them locally and blah blah blah, and like offer a little bit and then get a little bit and then build on it. Maybe that works for some people, but for me, I think just focus on yourself and trust that support's going to come.
Sure.
And yeah, like make yourself valuable as far as like being honest to everyone and being open to talk to. That's probably one of the best things I wish I knew from the start, so I could have just focused on that. But I did get a lot of good advice that I can't say I wish I knew because I did get people telling me that, like always take care of your equipment first, like make sure your equipment runs and really like don't kid yourself as far as like, oh, my gun runs. Oh yeah, that just happens. Like I get a stovepipe every once in a while. It's like that's okay, but like admit to yourself that you don't want to spend that time and effort to figure out what's causing it, because it is something and you can fix it.
Right.
Well, I'm a big proponent of that, and what I always tell people is make sure you're cleaning your guns, and cleaning your guns is, to me, not only ensuring that they're going to be functional, but it's also giving you the ability to check over the equipment that you might not normally see. Check the bolt, check firing pin springs, check your firing pin, things of that nature to say, are these in top condition? Because if they break in practice, that's one thing. If they break in a match, that's a tough thing to handle.
Right. Yeah, I've had that experience a lot, to the point where I'll pull my firing pin out between every day of shooting. PCCs break firing pins a lot, especially with the hyperfire trigger. So yeah, I'll always check those, and sure enough, like before a major match, it's always in two pieces. So I throw a new one in there.
Wow.
I mean, like, yeah, they still run in two pieces for a little bit, which is kind of nice. They just hit each other in line. So, but yeah, I actually at a match in December, it was at a night match, the Vision X night match up in Seattle area at Paul Bunyan. I went up just kind of to have a fun match. It's like half at night, half during the day. And the first stage, I get up there and I had checked my firing pin. I'm like, yeah, we're good to go. And my firing pin spring, which I didn't replace, broke, and it wasn't pushing the firing pin back far enough for the hammer to hit it. So I would have to get lucky where like my firing pin, was like hanging out just enough that the hammer actually had some contact on it. And it was like one every 4 rounds. So I was like racking out live rounds, going click, no bang, click, no bang, click, no bang, then click, bang. Yay, got him. So that actually ended up costing me the match there, and I got second. So yeah.
You turned it into a bolt action PCC almost.
Yeah, a bolt action PCC that fires every 4 or 5 rounds that you try. It was awesome.
Do you run your your competition gun in practice or vice versa, or you just use one gun? Because I know there's more and more people say, well, this is going to be my practice gun and this is going to be my competition gun. Do you do that, or you just run the same setup and make sure you get it taken care of?
So in pistols, I see that being a like much more viable strategy, but in PCC, I don't think it's really necessary if you're comfortable working on your gun. So I have spare parts that I bring, like every major part that can break, I have a spare that I bring to the match. So I'll have a spare trigger, I'll have a spare buffer, I'll have a spare bolt, which is on my belt actually on stages, and then spare optic. Aside from that, like everything else is pretty solid. Like you're not gonna have, I mean, knock on wood, you're not gonna have like a barrel split in half.
Right.
Or anything crazy happening with your receivers or something like that. So I don't find it necessary to bring a whole backup gun or have a whole backup gun, but I will replace parts on my match gun like pretty frequently just to make sure that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're kind of winding down on time, and typically the question that I like to ask folks that come on the podcast is, what's one question that you don't get asked nearly enough about that you really want to answer?
Can we talk about something else, and I'll let that, or like
let
think
that
about
percolate
that
for a minute.
Yeah.
Max, you should see Jeff. This one time down in Florida, I got into his van. It was a long story. It was actually almost 12 months ago. You know where I'm going with this, Jeff.
I do.
And Max, I get in this van, and he takes it to and from the gun range. It has all of his targets in it. And I sit in the passenger seat, and I look up. Here's a hat with blonde hair like a wig. And I just sat there. I looked at him like, do I even want to know? All right.
It was a joke given to me because I shaved my head bald, and somebody said, well, here, if you ever need hair, here's a hat for you. And I looked like a surfer dude with a ball cap when I would put that on.
It wasn't creepy at all.
Okay, I might have something actually.
All right, let's go.
Cool.
You're like, thank God, I'm out of stories.
We're out of quippy stories now. So please,
man,
Max,
this is a G-rated show. This is a G-rated show. I can go on for hours.
So I think one thing that I haven't heard get talked about too much is like, why is shooting such an attractive sport to pursue? And
Great question.
So I think it fits like in this really cool area where, you know, like achieving success in shooting gives you kind of the perfect level of like, I don't really want to say fame, but like notoriety and influence, like within like the larger community. So it's really cool. Like within the shooting community, you know, like people start to know you and recognize you, and it's really easy to make friends and meet people. And but then, you know, you're not like followed by, well, I guess like some people stalk you, like you said you did.
You like are welcome.
Yeah, Duncan Klein, that's the first thing he said to me. He's like, hi, I'm Duncan Klein. I stalk you on Instagram. When we first met. You know, but once you leave the range, like you're just a normal person like everyone else. And then the other really cool thing is like the major competitions in the world pretty much are open registration. And I guess IPSC has some kind of qualifier system, but you know, like our national championships are open, and you can shoot with the best in the world, and they're really accessible, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And then I think another thing about it is like once you get to a high level, like you have all these options for like what you can do with your skills within the shooting community. So like obviously like something that most people do is they go to instruct, which like me and Lynn have started doing over the last couple of years, and I started out at TPC teaching with Ron Avery and the Nelsons and a bunch of other awesome people, and that's kind of where I learned to teach. But like just having the opportunity to you know go into like making these cool niche products for competition shooters, or like just making high-end guns in general, or writing books that are for dry fire or for competition skills. I think it's really cool. It's all like the whole shooting community is almost like a micro environment where you have all these options to do whatever you want, but it's like it doesn't come with the negatives that come from doing that, I guess, in normal life, or like on a much bigger scale.
Well, it normally gets mentioned every episode, so I'll mention it here. Steve actually has a home range, and and so he does a lot of training. I have access to a range, and I do some training with a lot of juniors, and I have to admit, some of that is the most rewarding work I've done when you see somebody and you're able to help them get better and see them progress. There's a lot of satisfaction in that. So I completely agree with you with regards to training and enjoying doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. Like you're able to make such a difference in other people's lives, even though it's just like this silly game that we play,
I'm really glad you put it that way, because I say it all the time. This is a hobby, this is a game, this is a sport. There are very few who are making their living from it. A lot of people can make a living ancillarily through it, i.e. doing training or working for a gun manufacturer or doing that. But they still have, for someone who's, I always talk about Shane Coley. He's another one that we've been working on trying to get on, and he's agreed to it. We just got to find the right time. He's a Glock employee.
Right.
And, Rob Latham is a Springfield Armory employee. And so, there are very few that are out there actually making living just because of their shooting, but they can make a living ancillarily because of their shooting. And so I always try to stress that, because I always joke about the fact that I'm part of the Steel Target Paint team and have a lot of logos and very proud to wear those logos. But I always joke about the fact that most of the people out there we're just walking billboards with discount codes.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty common.
And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I'm proud to represent the companies that are on the shirt. But if you think we're getting paychecks from these companies to shoot, there are very few that are actually getting that done.
Speak for yourself, Jeff.
Hey, Steve, you're lucky. I'm not. Like I said,
Well,
I'm a computer nerd. That's that. If you ask me who my sponsor is, it's Quotient Technologies. They're the ones that are helping me get to all the matches. One of my jokes, Max, has always been I'm gonna get a shooting shirt made, and I'm gonna have a picture of my wallet on the back of it. It's gonna say my sponsor.
Yeah, that would be my mom for me. Not so much anymore, but definitely when I started.
Oh yeah.
Well, fantastic. Well, Matt, I really appreciate you being on the podcast. I approached you at the Nationals. You were very open to the idea. We were able to get connected, and I really appreciate you spending the time and talking with us and sharing some of your insights with our listeners.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, we appreciate it. All right, Jeff. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon, man.
Sounds good. Have a good one, Steve.